Residential real estate abounds with fallacies and misconceptions, mostly created by dishonest politicians, biased journalists, and economists who don't understand property. One of the biggest is the one that claims that so-called prime property shows the best capital growth. Now, a year ago, I attended a national conference for real estate professionals at which a keynote speaker expressed the view that you had to buy prime to get good capital growth, and indeed proclaimed that if you couldn't buy prestige property, you shouldn't buy at all, or at least wait until you could afford something in the higher price ranges. Now, I had to challenge that view in question time because everything I've observed over 4 decades in real estate research absolutely contradicts this notion. I was astounded that someone presented as a real estate expert could make such an unsupportable claim and give such terribly bad advice. It's amazing how many people still cling to this outdated and plainly inaccurate view of real estate, which is emphatically contradicted by all the evidence. Many still believe that prime outperforms affordable, that the closer to the CBD, the stronger the capital growth, that capital cities outdo the regions, and that the biggest cities show better capital growth over time than the smaller ones. Now, all of those opinions are fallacies. They're just plain wrong. Now, whether you examine the past quarter, the past year, the past 3 years, the past decade, or the past 20 years, you'll find compelling evidence that the regions have outperformed the capital cities, that the biggest cities have underachieved, that affordable areas have excelled on capital growth, and that proximity to the CBD is utterly irrelevant in real estate investment. And you can add another misconception that increasingly is being proven wrong, the one that says houses on land show better capital growth than apartments. Now, an example of what the research actually shows is provided by PropTrack, which earlier this year examined how much dwelling values have grown in the 4 years since COVID disrupted property markets. The leading jurisdictions for price growth were in order: regional Queensland, regional South Australia, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth. The bottom ranking markets amongst the capital cities and state regional markets were Sydney and Melbourne. PropTrack also looked at the local markets with the highest growth over the 4-year period and found that all of the top 10 locations in Australia were regional or outer ring areas of the smaller capital cities. The cheaper areas of Adelaide and Brisbane were the most prominent for high capital growth, as well as regional areas of Queensland and South Australia. Now, all of that's good news for most people approaching property investment who can't afford to buy in those higher price brackets, because it means you don't need to buy expensive homes to do well in real estate. The typical investor I encounter wants to buy a property below $500,000 because they can't afford to go higher. The really good news is that buying affordable real estate in good locations is a win-win-win situation: a lower buying price, higher rental yield, and good prospects for capital growth. We call this kind of real estate the cheapies with prospects. Now let me give you just one example of how cheapies with prospects locations can deliver the most spectacular capital growth. Many times in the past few years, I've made the observation that the cheapest houses in capital city Australia were located in the affordable northern suburbs of Adelaide, specifically in the local government area of Playford. A few years ago, many suburbs had median prices in the 200,000s, and let's face it, this was seriously down market real estate. But in the past 12 months, these suburbs have delivered extraordinary capital growth. Most suburbs in the city of Playford have grown more than 20% in the past 12 months, and 7 of those suburbs have lifted by more than 30%, including Elizabeth North, which is up 33%, Eyre, which is up 38%, Davern Park, which is up 41%, and Elizabeth South, which has grown in 1 year 55%. In Davern Park, the median house price 3 years ago was just $190,000, and now it's $460,000. Typical houses in Elizabeth North cost $195,000 3 years ago, and now they're $425,000. There's been similar spectacular price rises right throughout this precinct in the affordable north of Adelaide. So keep those figures in mind next time someone tells you that you have to buy expensive houses in prestige areas to get the best capital growth.